So let me go ahead then and turn it over to Mary Paist-Goldman.
Thanks, Tish. I hope everyone is having a good evening and hopefully enjoying the nice spring temperatures we're having. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you guys can hear a bit more about our Island Park project. All right. Can you guys all see that? Hopefully. All right, good. So so we are going to talk a lot about the Musconetcong Island Park. And for most of you, you probably aren't familiar with this because right now it's not a park yet. It's a park in progress. So we're going to kind of walk through where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. All right, so first, the Musconetcong Island Park was a vision that was born by some of the board members back in the early 2000s. And I included a sketch here that should be familiar to several of you former board members, including the person who drew it. I believe he's on the line, Chuck is here. And the thought behind this came about from a property that was donated to MWA back in 1999 from Asbury Carbons. It includes an abandoned building, but it's a little island piece, you know, in the middle of the Musconetcong River, right near our River Resrouce Center. The access to the island is through a staircase that comes down off of the bridge from County Route 643 and was used primarily for Asbury Carbons for some of their processing. And MWA was mulling over what to do with this property, similar to when, you know, we were given the River Resrouce Center building and pursued what to do with that property. There was some thought about creating a Musconetcong Island Park. So here's a shot of what it looks like from our mill building, looking towards the bridge and towards that abandoned building. That's kind of what it looks like now, although less leaves on the trees, obviously, for our current weather condition. It's about, you know, a 1/4 acre in size. It's located right in the middle of the Muskie. It's entirely within Bethlehem Township in Hunterdon County, and it is connected to that bridge that I mentioned before. And the bridge is going to play a pretty integral role in, you know, what we have to deal with the island and what we've dealt with thus far. So for those of you who know me, I haven't been on the board that long, only for a couple of years now, but my involvement with the Island Park started a long time ago as well, not all the way back into the early 2000s, but it's going on probably 7 years now that I've been involved in some capacity with the Island Park project. And I'll talk a bit more about that as we go on here. Here's an aerial view of Musconetcong Island Park. You can see the River Resrouce Center is located right at the intersection of Maple Avenue and 643. And then the building that is across the street from that is our mill building that many folks should be familiar with. We've invested a lot of time and financial investment into doing restoration work on that mill building. And then our Island Park is located just below that to the south in the middle of the Muskie. You can see there's some vegetation on that island, some trees, and you'll see a little bit more further on about what the plans are for that park. But you can also make out just past the red outline the existing staircase up to the bridge. Here's a shot of the building from the bridge itself. So this building was used by Asbury Graphite back starting in somewhere between 1925 and 1940. It's a 2-story building, and it was the former laboratory for the Asbury Graphite complex. There's no modern plumbing in the building, so they ended up ultimately abandoning it in the 1970s. It also flooded really frequently. I mean, it's located on this small island in the middle of the river. So whenever the flows were high, water was coming up into that building. It was built on a foundation of an old wool factory that was destroyed by a fire in 1881. I thought that was kind of interesting. And it is part of the Asbury Historic District, which also has played a role into some of the processes that we've had to go through with regards to approvals for the project. But you can see the building's kind of an eyesore. There is a bit of peeling materials that are seen in this image, like paint and things off of the face of it. And definitely some artists have decorated the building as well. So currently, what is the island used for? There is a guardrail that blocks the staircase from the bridge, which I believe was installed by the county to deter trespassing. And the island is obviously privately owned. MWA is the owner, but prior to us, it was Asbury Graphite. However, it's frequently used by residents and people traveling through to gain access for fishing down in the river. It's a very popular spot for swimming. People who have frequented the area know that jumping off that bridge is a commonplace activity for teenagers. Hanging out on this island is also very common. Having now done a couple of cleanups on the island as a volunteer, you find a lot of liquor bottles and other garbage and debris. So it's definitely a hangout spot. And it's covered in the graffiti and just general litter, and is sitting there rotting, waiting to be taken down. It's asking to be taken down. So all right, so what are we doing with the project? Well, we want to demolish that derelict building. Number one, we want to get rid of that building. We'd like to remove all the debris and the trash that exists on the island. We need to repair the dilapidated staircase because the staircase is in a bit of disrepair, and I'll talk a bit more in detail about what that involves as we get a little further on here. But we do need to deal with the staircase. Also, we're going to be installing some sitting stones so that there's spots for people to sit on when they go down to this island park for, quiet reflection or fishing or, just relaxing or painting. And then we just want to also provide, as a really a large goal for the project, an active recreational access point to the river. We don't want to have it be, barriered off from residents, but we'd like to encourage better use of the island, obviously as a park feature. And so we want to give people the access to launch their kayaks and canoes from this island. It has a good location just downstream of the Asbury Dam that's associated with that bridge as well. So it's just a good general spot. So the people who are involved, there's a lot, and I'll cover a little bit more specifically on some of those people as we go on here. But we have an engineering design team who've done plans for this. We have MWA staff that have been actively involved in moving this forward. There's board members like myself and others who've been working hard trying to get the project through to completion. We've had a lot of volunteer support thus far, and we're going to need more volunteer support as we move through. And then we have construction contractors lined up to do the work. And how we're completing that, well, we're looking at, funding this with grants and private donations. So when we demolished the building, first thing we had to address before we could even consider demolishing was taking the lead paint off the building. We had done an environmental assessment of the property, and that concluded that obviously the paint on the building, it couldn't be ruled out as being lead-based, so we needed to remove the paint prior to being able to demolish the building. And this is a shot from 2019 when myself and some other board members went out there and we scraped all the paint off the building, bagged everything up to be properly disposed of so that the contractor could be ready to do the demolition. We also had in the environmental assessment an investigation for potential asbestos and other contaminated materials that could exist. And that has turned up that everything that we are removing is, you know, within the reasonable thresholds. There's no, you know, hazardous site remediation paperwork necessary for the demolition of the building. And when we talk about the demolition of the building for the island, we'd like to just take the walls and the roof of the structure down. We're going to retain the foundation. So if you recall on the earlier slide, I mentioned, you know, that we are, this was built on the foundation of the woolen factory that was there from the early 1800s. And that foundation slab is one that we want to keep, not only because of its history, but also because it provides a nice level platform for access for people to the island. And so it doesn't make sense to take the foundation out. So we would be leaving that foundation slab. To do that demolition of the building, access is really tough. Like I mentioned several times, the only access to the building currently is from the stairs. And removing, you know, the building can't be accomplished by hand from the stairs, although there's plenty of times we've joked about this as board members, just going up there and taking this out, you know, with hammers and removing it piece by piece. It's going to be done with heavy equipment. So they're going to need to work from the bridge and take it apart in pieces, working with that heavy machinery from up on the bridge itself. So here's just like a panoramic view facing back from the building toward the bridge. It shows you a bit of the existing abutments, again, more of the colorful artwork that exists, as well as a piece of the stairs. And the stairs themselves are concrete the whole way down. There's metal railings on them, and then there's a walkway that goes out actually towards the second story. If I back up a couple slides, I think you can see that walkway in this image here that goes out to what used to be a doorway, I think, into the second floor at some point that's been sealed off. So, so those stairs have basically steps on them that create a trip hazard. They don't meet modern stair guidelines. And if you were to walk down these stairs, as I have several times, you know that there's a potential for trip and fall. And so that created some obstacles for us in terms of approaching the design and the permitting for the project. So the problem with the access to this island has created many of the problems we've dealt with in terms of delays in getting the park completed. The stairs are located in the middle of the bridge. And as I mentioned, that bridge is in the middle of the Musconetcong River. And for folks familiar with the area, you know that the bridge spans two counties, Warren County to the north and Hunterdon County to the south. And so what that means in terms of our access is that the bridge is co-owned by both counties because it goes across the Muskie and divides the two counties. This bridge is maintained by Hunterdon County, but is owned by both. So what that really translates to is that permitting gets really complicated really fast when dealing with needing to get approvals from both counties. It's a unique situation, and there are not any other access points in Hunterdon and Warren County where the access is only from the bridge. And so that created numerous headaches for us through the design and permitting process, which I will go into a bit more detail on later. But it's basically the bottom line is accessing the island park has proven to be a large challenge for us. As I mentioned, the stairs pose a trip and fall hazard. So the Department of Community Affairs, who does approvals for these types of projects for Bethlehem Township, they have to approve the construction of the stairs. And so we needed to comply with the trip and fall hazard. We needed to look at stair heights to adjust the design. We also had to work with the State Historic Preservation Office because this is in that Asbury Historic District. So they also had to approve the stairs. They had to approve the color of the stairs, the material types of the stairs, and they had to basically do a review to document whether the proposed stairs would be consistent with the historic district. And then lastly, they also have to be approved by Hunterdon and Warren County. And so all those agencies, they don't all agree on all the aspects of the stairs. And this led to a lot of plan revision and lots of time. And we have still been working with some of these agencies to obtain approvals. And it actually took what should be a fairly simple and straightforward set of stairs to gain access to the island and turned it into a very complicated and expensive set of stairs that are necessary for us to gain that access. So my next slide, I mentioned these are the quote $1 million stairs. It's not actually $1 million to build them, but I feel like it's $1 million worth of effort and time that has gone into the design and the access for these stairs. Ultimately, the stairs are going to be metal railings. We are going to have some metal stairs. There's some platform extensions that need to be made in order to have the stair access. And this image here is looking back again at the bridge, showing you kind of where the access point to the stairs would be as it relates to the two openings in the bridge. So you have river flowing, you know, on both the left and right sides of the stairs shown in this image. So I'm going to move on from the stairs, but I'm going to show you one more view, and this is sort of a bird's eye view from the engineering drawings showing where those stairs come down. And the square that has the gray outline around it is our foundation of the building. And then on that foundation of the building is where those sitting stones are proposed to be placed. And then there's going to be a bit of regrading that's done adjacent to the foundation of the building, and some native plants will be added as well. So here's just a shot looking back at the building from the facing downstream from the left side of the island. And you're looking towards some of the trees. And the trees on the island are actually really nice. It's a kind of a gradual slope down into the river there. It's an easy spot to kind of get in and out, which is why it was so desirable to use for access of kayaks and canoes. So we are planning to kind of level out the ground around the slab that will remain, and we'll take out some of the accumulated debris. Because of its placement, you know, in the middle of the river, it accumulates a lot of vegetative and floating debris that travels down the river. And so we need to remove some of that just to kind of keep it cleaned out. I think we'll have potentially less debris that accumulates in and around the building once it's gone, because we won't have such a large obstruction in the middle of the river. But the bridge itself kind of provides an obstruction, so the amount of debris may vary. But we'll be adding some native plantings in too as well. So here's a rendering that was actually drawn up by one of our volunteers of what it might look like. It shows you a nice staircase down to the slab and people sitting there kind of reflecting out on the river, showing a bit of the kayak access and, you know, a fisherman in the river. And you're looking at in the background there the Asbury Carbon facility that will still obviously be there and be in operation. But this is kind of the vision for what the park could be when we're all finished with it, and what I hope to see this year. So the partners involved in this, the engineer for the project was Princeton Hydro. I actually used to work at Princeton Hydro and was originally involved in this in the early phases when one of our former board trustees reached out to me and asked me to help him put together an engineering proposal for the design for the project. And now the project's managed by Jeff Gall of Princeton Hydro and his team in terms of the engineering design. Harrington and Sons is our contractor for the demolition and the park improvements, and they've been very patient, dealing with a lot of delays. They bid the project for us several years ago with the intention of getting started at that point, and we'll touch on a bit of why that didn't happen in a few minutes here, but they are our contractor. And then MWA staff who've been involved. You know, Alan Hunt has really been at the front running of this project since its inception. He worked closely with Bill Gerke, who was our former trustee, who was really the the one who took the charge and ran with it and got us really far along on the project. But Karen and Cindy have been working now with getting things moving forward on the project. I've been working with them as well, kind of managing it for the board. Bill Levins has been instrumental in getting approvals and running around, helping us kind of get things moving along. And Ray Merrill is offering help through the construction phases of the project. You know, we've had so many members, board staff and friends who've helped us along the way with this project, which, you know, came as an idea, you know, almost 20 years ago, kind of push it along to where it is now. So our funding for the project, we have grants from the National Park Foundation, from the Green Acres program, from NIFWIS, and then we have some private donations which have been able to fund the design and permitting and also provide us with the funding to complete the construction phases. So construction phase, you know, we were ready to start in the summer of 2019. I showed images of us scraping paint. At that point, we put the project out to bid in early 2019. We selected Harrington and awarded the contract to them in the early summer of that year. And when we were ready to go, we ran into problems with permitting from Hunterdon and Warren County. Because of the stairs being located between the two counties in the middle of the bridge, we needed permits issued from both Hunterdon and Warren County, and they had not approached a project like this before. Like I said, this project is unique in that regard. And so they weren't sure exactly how to do it. And we got to the point where we were having a pre-construction meeting on site, and then there was disagreements about paperwork that needed to be filed. And so we had to launch into a fairly lengthy review of a maintenance and indemnity agreement for the project, which I am happy to say we have now completed. But that really slowed us down. You know, we had hoped to have that resolved by the winter prior to COVID, and it just didn't happen. And I count COVID as a blessing for this project because during COVID, there was a change in personnel assigned at one of the county agencies who had kind of been stalling this on us. And when that personnel change happened, suddenly we got positive movement on that maintenance agreement, and we were able to move things forward. And so we got that maintenance agreement all executed and filed appropriately with the various agencies it needed to be filed with. And I'm happy to say, you know, that we completed a task that started way back in the summer of 2019, earlier this year, actually. It just happened. The filings were completed just about a month ago. And so we were hopeful to be ready to start, and we do have 2 of 3 needed permits to move forward now, and we're just waiting on the 3rd permit, which I'm hopeful to receive here in the next few weeks. And Harrington, like I had mentioned before, our contractor has stayed on through all of these, you know, potential start dates, and then shifting and restarting and then shifting again. And they have really been troopers and held on with us for a really long time to move this forward. And I am very optimistic that we are going to clear this last hurdle with our final permit and that we will be in construction this year for that park. We're kind of expecting the construction to take somewhere around a month to complete. I know that it could be longer depending on the need to close the lanes for traffic because they have to work from the bridge. There have been some concerns about the lane closure and the need for flaggers. In fact, the traffic control portion of the construction is one of the most expensive pieces we have to deal with. However, I think we're going to be able to, you know, if we have good weather, get it done within that 1 month time period. So, you know, like I mentioned, you know, why are all the delays? And it's hard with a project like this. You know, you go into it optimistically thinking, well, maybe we can get this whole project done in, you know, 1 year or 2 years. And when Bill Gerke had first approached me back in 2015 or 16 to look into the project, I was optimistic with him. I thought, yeah, we can get through this. You know, there's permits that take longer than others, but, you know, I think we'll be able to do it. And we've really learned a lot as we've gone through this. And because the project is so unique in its location, it has just proven to be one where we're kind of breaking new ground, and we're, you know, things are new for us every time. There's no precedent set by another project that we can go to and cite for the delays and the things that have gone on. And every time something changes, like I mentioned, even something as simple as a paint color on the stairs, we need approvals from multiple agencies. So, you know, we had a request from DCA to increase the stair heights so that they were safer. And then we had to go back to New Jersey State Historic Preservation Office to get okays that that was still consistent with the historic places designation. And then when we go back to them and we talk about materials for construction, then we have to ask the county if the materials are acceptable to them. And so you just get into this sort of vicious cycle of needing all these approvals, and you have to be patient. I have been extremely patient through this. You have to be, you know, willing to kind of, you know, maybe suck in some air and take a walk around when you get frustrated, because there's been a lot of frustrations. And I'm, you know, I was sad that Bill Gerke, you know, he moved to Wisconsin, for folks who knew him last year. And I was disappointed that we didn't get this island park completed before he moved. But I promised him that, you know, once we have it taken down, that I'm going to FaceTime him from the island so he can see, you know, real time what's going on. Because I'm sticking with this. You know, I've been involved in it for 7 years. I'm not going anywhere until it's completed. So I'm excited to kind of see where we can go. And when it's complete, you know, we're really excited about the increased access to the river for anglers and paddlers, and kind of getting rid of that, you know, nuisance, trespassing, vandalized building kind of eyesore that it is now. And it'll be really unique. You know, people will say, oh, have you heard of the Musconetcong Island Park? You know, we're hopeful that even it might serve as open space for the residents of Bethlehem Township. You know, they have an interest in potentially acquiring the park when it's complete, so that their residents have another green space. And we all know how important green spaces are, you know, more than ever nowadays because of COVID, that having this access point for people who live in the area is just going to be a tremendous asset for MWA and for everyone who uses the river. So where do we go from here? I'm hopeful, you know, within 2 weeks to a month that I can report back that we have that final permit, and that will be breaking ground. And maybe next year at the annual meeting, I can share photos of the completed park, or you guys can visit it yourselves. You know, we'd be grateful to have you. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you. If you have any questions or anything, you can feel free to ask them now, or you can email me. My email is here. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Mary. That was great. And even though it shows on this screen, her last name is Paist-Goldman, I think we're going to have to start thinking it is Mary Patience Goldman.